She is a narrated fiction story created for discussion and entertainment purposes.
Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. I never thought buying a home would land me in a war, but the day we moved into our dream house, the president of a nearby HOA declared it her territory. What followed wasn't just neighborly drama, it was a suburban battle of wills, laws, lies, and one relentless Karen. I never imagined I'd be double-checking cadastral overlays and HOA zoning maps in the middle of the night, but after years of renting under ridiculous rules, I wasn't taking any chances. My name's Jonathan Cade, 37, civil infrastructure engineer, husband to a saint of a woman named Sarah, and father to two chaotic but brilliant kids. We'd lived in rentals for over a decade, places where the mailbox color was apparently a moral issue, where our kid's tricycle counted as clutter, and where the HOA once fined us for having a tomato plant visible from the sidewalk. So when we finally had enough savings from a recent project, I oversaw a multi-million-dollar highway redesign. I made it my personal mission to find a forever home that came with peace, privacy, and absolutely no HOA in sight. I spent 4 months doing what I do best, verifying, measuring, dissecting. I wasn't just browsing listings. I was pulling county plats, checking zoning overlays, comparing parcel boundaries against satellite imagery. I emailed listing agents questions they'd never heard before and flagged properties with ambiguous access roads or adjacent right-of-way easements like they were ticking bombs. If a house so much as bordered an HOA development, it went on a special list for deeper scrutiny. And then I found it. A brick two-story with a detached garage and a sloping backyard that backed into a thick belt of forest, nestled at the northern edge of a place called Creekwood Estates. The kicker, it wasn't in Creekwood. The property was on land classified under an older subdivision from the 70s, predating the HOA by decades, grandfathered out of every single rule. No dues, no committees, no one measuring my grass. The lot was clean on the county plat, zoned residential and verified by the county clerk. No encumbrances, no covenants, just beautiful, quiet, HOA-free dirt. Within 24 hours, I was inside the house with the listing agent, walking through hardwood floors, mentally placing our furniture. I could see it already. Sarah's spice rack on the kitchen wall, the kids' bikes hanging in the garage, my toolbox finally out of storage. We made an all-cash offer that same afternoon, and 2 days later, the deed was in my name. Notarized, registered, and sealed by the county recorder, officially ours. The very next morning, we pulled into our new driveway in a rented moving van, our SUV loaded with boxes and a pair of cheap walkie-talkies so the kids could pretend they were on a mission. Sarah was practically glowing. We unloaded with that first-day buzz. Everyone talking over each other, arguing about where to put what, the kids drawing suns and spaceships in chalk all over the driveway. Sarah unwrapped our ceramic coffee set and lined it up on the front porch, her small way of saying, "We're home." And then we heard the voice, "Excuse me, excuse me. What do you think you're doing?" I turned. From around the corner of the hedge bordering the property came a woman speed-walking in a tailored gray suit and practical flats, clutching a clipboard like a weapon. Late 40s, bottle blonde bob, square jaw that looked like it had been carved by HOA bylaws. She moved like someone who had never heard the word no. She stormed onto my driveway like she paid for the concrete herself. You can't just move in. That house is under review." I blinked. "Under what?" "That house," she snapped, pointing like it was radioactive, "was being considered for acquisition by Creekwood Estates. It's supposed to be part of our community. We're in discussions. You've entered illegally." "Ma'am," I said carefully, "this house was on the open market. I bought it 3 days ago. I have the deed." She scoffed so hard I thought she'd rupture something. "That's impossible. I personally toured this property last week. I told the listing agent I was preparing an offer. I had a verbal agreement pending. This is theft." I could feel Sarah's hand tighten around my arm. The kids had gone quiet. The woman marched over to a box Sarah was carrying, a fragile labeled one, of course, and yanked it out of her hands. "Hey!" I shouted, lunging forward. "Back off!" The box hit the pavement and shattered. I heard the unmistakable crunch of porcelain, Sarah's coffee set. Her mother's, the one she inherited. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered, staring at the broken pieces. "You psychopath," I snapped. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Karen, I didn't know her name yet, but let's be real, it was Karen, stood her ground. This house was intended for Creekwood Estates expansion. Your sneaky little purchase sabotaged that. I will be raising this with the HOA. You've made enemies, mister. I stepped between her and my wife. Lady, we don't belong to your HOA. This property is outside your jurisdiction. She glared at me like I'd kicked her dog. I am the HOA, Karen Sherwood, president of Creekwood Estates. This is our domain. We're not going to let some out-of-town opportunists come in and ruin our uniformity. I pointed at the moving truck. My family is moving into our home, and you're trespassing. Back off before I call the cops. Karen looked like she was calculating something. She pivoted, walked to the hood of my SUV, and, no joke, dragged her key right across the fender with a deliberate screech. I warned you, she hissed. This won't go your way. There are rules here. I pulled out my phone and opened the camera. Thanks. Got that on video. Now I'm definitely calling the cops. She started walking backward, shouting over her shoulder, "You're a liar. That house is ours. You won't last a month." I dialed, calmly, clearly. "Hello. Yes, I need to report trespassing, property damage, and harassment from a Creekwood HOA representative. Yes, we have video. Yes, she's still visible walking away." The dispatcher's voice was steady. "Understood. Officers are en route." I hung up, turned to Sarah, and said the only thing that made sense. "Welcome home." The officers arrived faster than I expected. Maybe it was the words trespassing and property damage in my call, or maybe they just knew Karen Sherwood all too well. Either way, within 15 minutes, 2 squad cars rolled into my driveway, one cruiser parking sideways across the curb like they were expecting a hostage situation. A tall African-American officer stepped out first, sunglasses on, expression unreadable. His name tag read R. Maddox. The second officer was younger, paler, clearly new. His hand hovered a little too close to his holster, probably wondering why we were still standing here and not hiding behind the couch. I greeted them halfway down the drive, camera still in my hand, adrenaline still pulsing like electricity behind my ears. "You made the call?" Officer Maddox asked. "Yes, sir. Jonathan Cade. I'm the property owner, the woman who just left, Karen Sherwood. She trespassed, assaulted my wife with a box, smashed our property, keyed my SUV, and shouted that this home belonged to her HOA. I have video of all of it." Maddox raised an eyebrow, calm as stone. "You say you're the owner?" I handed over the folder I'd prepared, just in case something like this ever happened. Certified deed, county plat with property boundaries, time-stamped bill of sale. All neatly tabbed because, well, I'm me. Maddox flipped through the papers. "Creekwood Estates. You're outside of it." "Confirmed it myself." "The HOA stops 5 feet from my fence. This house predates their association by at least 20 years. It's not subject to their governance." The younger officer muttered, "Then what's she doing here?" "Harassing us," Sarah said coldly. She stood behind me, arms crossed, the broken pieces of her mother's coffee set still scattered across the porch. Maddox looked up from the paperwork and studied the scene. "All right, do you have that video?" I opened my phone, pulled up the footage, and played the part where Karen grabbed the box, dropped it, screamed about Creekwood's domain, then dragged her key across the fender like she was signing a death certificate. Both officers watched in silence. The younger one let out a low whistle. Maddox nodded once. "Yeah, that's criminal trespass, vandalism, and destruction of private property at minimum. And she put hands on your wife?" She yanked the box right out of her arms. No pushing, but enough to make it clear she had no boundaries. Maddox looked over his shoulder toward the entrance of the cul-de-sac. "She's still around?" "No," I said. "But she lives 2 doors down, just around that hedge." She stormed off screaming something about rules. "I'll go knock," said the younger cop, already turning. "Hold up, Jenkins," Maddox said. "Let's keep this clean. If she comes back or escalates, we'll file. For now, Mr. Cade, you want to press charges?" I glanced at Sarah. She looked pale but composed. Then at my kids, peeking through the window, clearly shaken but curious. And then at the SUV, the deep white scratch on the navy paint like a scar. My first instinct was vengeance, but I'd been in civil engineering long enough to know timing matters. Build too fast and things collapse. Build too slow and they rot. "Not yet," I said, "but I want this documented. I want it on record in case this gets worse." Maddox nodded. "That's wise. I'll write up an incident report, attach your video and documents. If she comes back, Or if you receive any more threats, call us immediately. Don't engage her directly." He handed me a card with the case number already scribbled on the back. "Thank you," I said, honestly. "Be careful," he replied. "Some of these HOA folks, they treat bylaws like scripture." The officers left, and for a moment, I stood in the silence of my own front yard and realized just how fast everything had gone sideways. The sun was still high, the boxes were still unpacked, and I already had a vandalism report open before I'd even plugged in the coffee machine. By late afternoon, we'd finished unloading. I took the kids on a walk through the backyard trail, trying to reassure them that everything was fine, that crazy people existed in every neighborhood, and that we had rules and police to protect us. But I'll admit, even I flinched when I spotted the Creekwood HOA sign at the edge of the path. A neat white plaque with serif lettering, "Maintaining Community Harmony Through Standards." By evening, I started going over the footage again, copying backups to the cloud, uploading the plates of her vehicle for insurance, and writing a full incident summary with timestamps. I was methodical, calculating, prepared. Karen Sherwood had chosen the wrong man to push around, but then came the second strike. The next morning, I stepped outside to grab the paper and immediately noticed the envelope taped to my front door. It looked like an official notice. Ivory stock, printed heading, seal in the top left corner that read, "Creekwood Estates HOA, Compliance Division." I opened it. Violation notice. "Dear resident, your residence is currently in violation of Creekwood Estates Neighborhood Aesthetic Policy 3.4, unapproved exterior tone, beige stone. As a reminder, all properties must adhere to approved exterior palettes. Furthermore, Section 2.8 prohibits chalk art, driveway clutter, and excessive lawn equipment exposure. You are hereby requested to appear before the Compliance Hearing Board on Thursday at 5:30 p.m. Failure to attend may result in daily fines. Sincerely, Compliance Officer, Creekwood Estates, HOA." I stared at it in disbelief. They were already trying to assert control, not with chains, but with bureaucracy. And the worst part, that wasn't all, because when I turned around to get back inside, I saw it. Someone had erected a temporary orange mesh barrier across the mouth of our driveway during the night. A zip-tied sign dangled in the middle. "Private access. Creekwood residents only." It looked official. It wasn't. And for the first time, I felt the twinge of something I hadn't expected. Rage. I didn't even bother bringing the envelope inside. I snapped pictures of the violation notice front and back, then held it up to the camera by my front door so the timestamp would sync with the motion alert. The Creekwood seal in the corner looked legitimate, but the formatting was off. No board member names, no contact number, no legal disclaimer. A homemade HOA citation. Cute. Sarah came out onto the porch, still in pajamas, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "What's that?" "Karen's next move," I said flatly. "Fake compliance notice." She glanced past me at the orange mesh blocking our driveway. "Is that even legal?" "No, not even close." I pulled the barrier aside, folded it up, and set it on the lawn like evidence. My mind was already building a case file. Photographs, video, printed screenshots, chain of custody. I'd been in enough infrastructure disputes to know the importance of a paper trail. "Take the kids inside," I told Sarah. "I'm calling the police again." This time, Officer Maddox showed up alone, a paper coffee cup in one hand. He took one look at the orange barrier and let out a low, world-weary groan. "She's back at it already?" he asked. "She never left." "Fake violation notice. Blocked my driveway overnight." "This is intimidation and trespassing." He crouched, inspected the sign, pulled out his phone, and snapped a photo for his report. "You got any idea who put it here?" I gestured toward the HOA enclave across the hedge. "Karen Sherwood, president of Creekwood Estates. She's been escalating since yesterday." Maddox stood, his eyes scanning the street. "I can go knock on her door again, but unless we catch her physically putting this stuff up, it's going to be tough to charge." "I have video," I said. His brows lifted. "You do?" I pulled out my phone and played the motion-activated clip from 2 a.m. The infrared footage was grainy but clear. Karen, in a bathrobe and slippers, dragging the orange mesh across my driveway with a flashlight between her teeth, zip-tying the sign to the post like she was planting a flag on the moon. Maddox's lips twitched, the closest thing to a laugh I'd seen from him. "Well, that'll do it." He started writing a citation number in his notebook. "All right, Mr. Cade, we're officially moving this from neighbor dispute into criminal mischief territory. You still want to press charges? Yes, I said without hesitation this time. I'm done playing. He nodded. Good call. I'll file an affidavit and forward it to the DA. This should at least get her a court date. While Maddox documented the evidence, Sarah came back out holding a printout from the county's public GIS portal. Jonathan, she said, look. She'd highlighted our parcel in bright yellow. The Creekwood HOA boundary stopped cleanly at the hedge. Next to it, she'd printed the original subdivision plat from 1974. The name, Evergreen Acres, was still faintly legible in the margin, the old development our house belonged to. I want this in the file, I told Maddox. Good idea, he said. It establishes you're not under their jurisdiction. Can you at least go tell her to stop? Sarah asked. Her voice cracked with frustration. We haven't even unpacked. I will, Maddox promised, and I'll be back with a summons if she keeps it up. He left to knock on Karen's door. I watched from the window as she answered in full battle regalia. Blazer, pearls, HOA badge pinned like a sheriff's star. They spoke for a few minutes. She gesticulated wildly, pointing at our house, then folded her arms. Maddox handed her a slip of paper. She snatched it, ripped it in half, and threw it onto her lawn before slamming the door. He came back shaking his head. She's adamant. Claims she had a verbal agreement with the listing agent to buy the property and that you're squatting on community land. I almost laughed. Squatting? I paid cash. She says the HOA had a right of first refusal. They don't. I know, Maddox said. She's bluffing, but she also said she's going to prove your lot is inside Creekwood by producing maps. I exhaled slowly. Let her try. Maddox gave me another card. Call me directly next time. If she steps foot here again, we'll arrest her. After he left, I sat at my kitchen island, staring at the deed, the plat, the screenshots of Karen zip-tying the sign like a lunatic. This was no longer just an annoying neighbor. This was an organized attempt to bully us into compliance with rules that didn't exist. She was trying to rewrite reality through paperwork and intimidation. Fine. I could play that game better than she could. That afternoon, I started assembling my own arsenal. I hired a licensed surveyor to come out that week and mark every inch of the boundary with GPS-verified stakes. I called my attorney, a colleague from my infrastructure work who specialized in property disputes, and sent her everything: the videos, the notices, the plat, the police report. She replied within an hour. This is textbook harassment. We'll file for an injunction and damages. I even drove to the county recorder's office and requested certified copies of every document on file for my parcel, including the original subdivision restrictions, to show a clean break from Creekwood. The clerk, a gray-haired man in suspenders, took one look at the paperwork and chuckled. Sherwood again, he muttered. That woman's been trying to annex half the county since she got elected HOA president. By the time I got home, Sarah had cleaned up the broken coffee set, and the kids were playing in the backyard trying to build a fort out of moving boxes. For a brief second, everything looked normal. A family settling into a new home. Then my phone buzzed with a new email notification. Subject: Compliance Hearing. Mandatory Attendance. From Creekwood Estates, HOAOutlook.com. And in that moment, my jaw actually ached from clenching so hard. She wasn't going to stop, but neither was I. The email from Creekwood Estates, HOAOutlook.com, was a masterpiece of delusion. Subject: Compliance Hearing. Mandatory Appearance Date: Thursday, 5:30 p.m. Location: Creekwood Estates Community Center. Dear Mr. Cade, you are hereby summoned to attend a mandatory compliance hearing to address multiple violations of Creekwood Estates community standards. Non-compliance may result in daily fines and enforcement actions. Sincerely, Karen Sherwood, President, Creekwood Estates HOA. There was no board co-signature, no legal footer, just Karen pretending her little suburban fiefdom extended past its borders like she was drawing lines on a map with a crayon. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the email to my attorney, then printed it out and filed it with everything else. She'd officially crossed from neighborhood annoyance into actionable harassment. 2 days later, the surveyor arrived, an old-school guy named Marty with sunburned forearms, a laser transit tripod, and no patience for nonsense. He spent 5 hours walking the perimeter of my property, placing GPS-marked stakes every 20 feet along the hedge that separated my yard from Creekwood Estates. By dusk, the line was undeniable. a dotted red boundary running in clear, legal geometry. We were not part of the HOA. Sarah stood beside me, watching as Marty packed up. "How often does this kind of thing happen?" she asked. Marty snorted. "With HOAs. More than you'd think. Power gets into the wrong hands. They start believing bylaws outrank deeds." The next morning, I got up early and placed small placards along the survey line. "Private property not subject to HOA jurisdiction verified by county surveyor." By 10 a.m., the response came. Karen returned. I heard her shrieking from across the lawn before I even saw her. "Unauthorized signage. This is deception." I opened the front door calmly and walked out with my phone already recording. Karen was standing at the edge of the survey line, hands on hips, fury practically steaming off her like a tea kettle. She was holding a manila folder in one hand, always a bad sign, and jabbing it toward my signposts like they were offensive graffiti. "These signs are illegal," she barked. "You can't just mark land without HOA approval." I walked right up to the boundary and stood there, about 6 inches on my side of the line. "Karen," I said with exaggerated patience, "this land is not, and has never been, under your HOA. I have the deed, the plat, the county maps, and now a GPS-staked survey to prove it. You can scream all you want, but the law doesn't care about your fantasy jurisdiction." "I have maps," she snapped, waving her folder. "Revised boundaries from the Creekwood Reorganization of 2021. I blinked. "Did you just say Creekwood Reorganization like it's the Treaty of Versailles?" "I'm serious," she shouted. "These were approved at our annual meeting." "By whom?" "Your book club. Your husband." She sputtered, then yanked out a folded map, clearly printed from Google Earth, with a lopsided red box drawn in marker around my house and yard. "This," she declared, "was ratified unanimously by the HOA Expansion Committee." "You don't have an expansion committee," I said flatly. "We do now." I held up my phone. "Just so we're clear, you're now on camera on my private property, falsely claiming legal authority based on a Sharpie and a Pinterest map. I'm going to send this to the police and the state licensing board." "You're a thug," she spat. "You and your kind don't belong in Creekwood." Something in her face cracked when she said that. It wasn't just rage anymore, it was desperation. I could see it in the trembling fingers, the red-rimmed eyes. She'd bet her identity on this HOA fantasy, and now it was slipping through her fingers. She didn't know how to be a normal neighbor. She only knew how to rule. Without another word, she stormed off down the sidewalk, leaving the fake map behind like it was radioactive. I picked it up, bagged it in a Ziploc for evidence, and walked back inside. Later that evening, the next wave came. A physical letter shoved through my mail slot. This one had real Creekwood HOA letterhead. But again, no board vote, no verification, just a demand. Failure to appear at compliance hearing will be considered an admission of guilt. It felt almost comical, like being threatened by a middle school student council. But I wasn't laughing, because the deeper this went, the more dangerous it became. Karen wasn't just trying to intimidate me, she was trying to fabricate a legal basis to seize control. The next day, I filed for a temporary restraining order. My attorney drafted the paperwork in under 3 hours. We included police reports, video evidence, the fake violation notices, the absurd red marker expansion map, surveyor documentation, and a notarized affidavit from the listing agent confirming that Karen had never submitted an offer on the house. We filed it with the county clerk and requested an emergency hearing. The judge reviewed the petition that same day and signed the TRO by the afternoon. Karen Sherwood was now legally forbidden from approaching within 100 feet of my property. And just like that, the line wasn't just metaphorical anymore. It was a court order. I slept a little better that night, knowing Karen was now legally restrained from stepping foot on my property. But peace was short-lived. Less than 24 hours after the judge signed the TRO, I got a call from my neighbor 2 doors down, an older gentleman named Greg who'd lived in the area for over 2 decades. "Hey, Jonathan," he said cautiously, "you might want to come take a look at what's going on at the end of your driveway." I grabbed my keys and stepped outside. And there it was. Someone had erected a chain barrier across the entrance to my driveway, secured with padlocks on either side. Attached to the chain was a bright orange sign that read, "Private access. Creekwood Estates residents only. Violators will be towed." I stared at it in disbelief. It was welded to 2 steel poles rammed into the gravel, clearly not a temporary installation. Sarah came out behind me. "Are you kidding me?" she said, incredulous. "Nope," I muttered, already dialing 911. The responding officer arrived within 15 minutes. A different one this time, a young guy named Ortega, who looked equally baffled when I showed him the survey markers and the restraining order. I explained that I hadn't installed the chain and that it was currently preventing me and my family from accessing our own home. Ortega took one look at the lock, shook his head, and said, "Let's treat this as what it is. Illegal obstruction of private access. Want me to cut it?" "Yes," I said, "but I want photos of everything first, and a report." We documented the entire setup, the chain, the sign, the poles, even the tire tracks leading back to Creekwood's service alley. While Ortega radioed in the vandalism report, I sent everything to my attorney and emailed a copy to the judge's clerk. Then Ortega took a bolt cutter from the back of his cruiser and snapped the chain like a twig. "Want me to remove the poles, too?" he asked. "No," I said. "Leave them in. They're evidence." By mid-afternoon, I had a second copy of the police report and a follow-up call from the HOA licensing board. Apparently, they'd received my complaint and weren't pleased. They requested I submit all materials for a formal review of Karen Sherwood's certification status. I dropped everything into a shared folder: the videos, the maps, the survey results, the fake notices, the restraining order, and now, the driveway incident. The real kicker came later that evening, just after sunset. My doorbell rang. I checked the porch camera feed and saw a tall, graying man in a blazer holding a folder and what looked like a clipboard. He wasn't a cop. He looked more like a government type. I stepped out cautiously. "Can I help you?" "Mr. Cade, my name's Alan Kirkwood. I'm with the State Department of Consumer Affairs. We received a priority complaint about a potential HOA boundary violation and the unauthorized use of regulatory signage. Mind if I ask you a few questions?" I couldn't help but laugh. "Sir, I've got a full dossier waiting for you." He spent the next 45 minutes sitting at my dining room table, reviewing documents, watching video footage, and taking photos of the fake notices. When he saw the red marker boundary map Karen had submitted to the county office, yes, she actually tried, he blinked twice and muttered, "Jesus, that's not even legal stationery." "What does this mean for her?" I asked. "Well," he said, closing his folder, "using the HOA seal for personal retaliation, filing unauthorized notices, installing physical barriers on a non-HOA parcel. That's a cocktail of violations. At minimum, she's looking at disciplinary action and license suspension. Depending on what else we find, maybe criminal referral." Sarah brought us coffee as he stood to leave. "One more thing," he said at the door. "She filed a complaint about you, too." I raised an eyebrow. "Of course she did. She accused you of harassment, intimidation, and, quote, aggressive signage. We're investigating both sides, but from everything I've seen today, you've been remarkably restrained." He handed me a business card. "We'll be in touch." That night, I reviewed all the footage from my external cameras and backed everything up to a private cloud, just in case. The next morning, I walked outside to grab the paper and found something new nailed to the side of my mailbox. A flyer, color-printed, laminated, urgent notice to all Creekwood residents. A hostile infiltrator has illegally taken possession of the house at 112 Fern Hollow Road. He is not a member of our community. He is violating our architectural standards and safety expectations. He is surveilling neighbors with hidden cameras. He has rejected friendly attempts at resolution. Creekwood Estates demands immediate corrective action. Karen Sherwood, HOA president. She was going public now, spreading propaganda, trying to turn the neighborhood against me like this was a Cold War leaflet drop. What she didn't know, or chose to ignore, was that Fern Hollow Road wasn't even in Creekwood Estates. And this was the final push I needed. I was done waiting for institutions to catch up. I filed the civil lawsuit. It was a three-pronged attack: defamation based on the flyers and public statements, vandalism and property damage documented in police reports, abuse of authority, and fraudulent use of HOA status supported by the survey, restraining order, and state board investigation. My attorney called it one of the most textbook cases of HOA overreach I've ever seen. Karen Sherwood was about to face something far worse than an angry email. She was about to face court. The morning after filing the lawsuit, I woke up to find my inbox flooded, Local news outlets, HOA bloggers, even a real estate podcaster had somehow caught wind of the chaos at 112 Fern Hollow Road. Apparently, Karen's flyers had been seen by someone with a blog, and once my neighbor Greg gave a quote and linked the restraining order, the whole thing went mildly viral in the local scene. HOA president claims ownership of home she didn't buy, read one headline. Another just said, Karen gets cuffed. I wasn't celebrating yet, but it felt like the tide was turning. Meanwhile, Karen doubled down. That same afternoon, 2 HOA volunteers, probably her loyal disciples, walked the sidewalk outside my house, clipboard in hand, pretending to do an external visual compliance review. I watched them from my garage camera as they measured my mailbox and took pictures of my front yard like I was a zoo exhibit. I stepped outside. "Can I help you?" They stiffened, clearly not expecting a confrontation. "We're here on behalf of the Creekwood Architectural Committee," one said. "You may be in violation of design codes." "You're on private property," I said flatly. "Back up off my grass and save that script for someone actually under your jurisdiction." They shuffled away. I noted their faces, saved the footage, and emailed it to my attorney as part of the ongoing harassment claim. Later that evening, we got a knock. Not a doorbell, a hard, aggressive knock. When I opened the door, 2 sheriff's deputies stood there, one already resting his hand near his belt. "Mr. Cade, we received a report of surveillance abuse and potential zoning fraud. May we come in?" Karen had filed a report. Again. I handed over the court order, the property deed, the zoning classification printout from the county office, and, just for flair, the official boundary overlay map with a red circle around my house marked not in HOA. The officers took a few photos, asked routine questions, and left clearly unimpressed with Karen's complaint. "She's wasting resources," one of them muttered as they walked away. The next day, my attorney called. "She tried to file an emergency injunction," he said, "claimed your presence was threatening to community cohesion." And judge dismissed it in 5 minutes. Things escalated fast from there. Karen sent out a mass email to all Creekwood residents, calling me a suburban squatter and accusing me of exploiting legal loopholes to attack community values. It was pure defamation, and now it was in writing. That night, someone egged our garage door. Sarah had had enough. We called a security company and installed full perimeter cameras with facial recognition, license plate logging, and motion-activated lights. I put up a massive sign at the gate. "Private property, not Creekwood. Trespassers will be prosecuted." Karen's war had now reached its boiling point, and she still didn't understand she'd already lost the legal battle. By now, our neighborhood was in a cold war. Every morning felt like a standoff. Some of the Creekwood folks started avoiding eye contact altogether. Others gave me awkward thumbs-ups when Karen wasn't looking. I could tell the tide was shifting, but Karen wasn't done yet. She was about to set herself on fire, trying to burn me down. It started with a knock at the door from a county inspector, but not the usual kind. This one was from Environmental Services. "Mr. Cade," he said, flipping through a folder, "we've received a complaint about unpermitted land alterations, possible erosion risk, and non-compliant drainage structures on your lot." My jaw tensed. Karen had filed yet another bogus complaint, this time with the county, hoping to get me shut down over the backyard French drain I'd installed. Fortunately, I was ready. I pulled out the stamped approval for the work, plus photos showing the certified contractor's trenching and proper slope grades, all dated and signed off by a licensed engineer. The inspector raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by the level of preparation. He stayed polite but left quickly. Another battle dodged. But the real turning point came that Friday. I received a cease and desist letter, not from a law firm, but directly from Creekwood HOA, complete with a forged signature of their general counsel. It accused me of willful defiance of HOA mandates, failure to appear at mandatory disciplinary hearings, and unauthorized occupancy of communal property. The kicker? It came with a fake fine of $12,000 and a threat to place a lien on my house. That was a crime. A real one. I called my lawyer immediately. He laughed, then said, "This is great. This right here, this is the nail." We filed a motion to amend our lawsuit to include fraudulent legal threats, unauthorized use of HOA authority, and attempted extortion. By Monday, we had subpoenaed the HOA board meeting minutes, all internal communications from Karen's HOA email account, and the HOA's registered legal documents. Karen tried to stall, but my lawyer filed an emergency motion for compliance, and the judge granted it. That's when the dam broke. Buried inside the HOA emails were multiple messages where Karen openly admitted to pushing out the buyer and using pressure to keep the property in Creekwood hands. One thread even showed her instructing a board member to use legal-looking documents. It doesn't matter if they're not enforceable. It was over. We compiled the evidence into a 100-page dossier and handed it over to the district attorney's office. At that point, Karen must have realized she'd gone too far because she vanished, didn't show up at HOA meetings, stopped patrolling the streets, and left the board scrambling to explain. But the wheels of justice were already in motion. The DA scheduled a preliminary hearing. Karen would be facing criminal charges, and I finally slept through the night. The courthouse was packed, not because Karen Sherwood was a celebrity, but because by now her antics had become local legend. A few neighbors had even printed out screenshots from next-door threads as if they were collectible baseball cards. My wife, Rachel, sat beside me, calm but alert. She was the reason I hadn't burned out through all this. Our kids stayed home with her sister. No need for them to see how justice smelled in a Georgia County courtroom. Karen shuffled in, finally showing signs of wear. Her usual sharp power suits were gone, replaced with a wrinkled beige blazer and flats that squeaked when she walked. She looked smaller. The smirk was gone too. The charges read like a bingo card of HOA tyranny gone wrong: criminal trespass, destruction of private property, false legal claims, document forgery, attempted extortion, and impersonating a licensed legal officer. My lawyer had done a surgical job, but the true bombshell was the digital forensic report showing that Karen had used HOA letterhead to send over a dozen false notices to multiple non-HOA residents over the past year. I wasn't her first target, just the first to fight back. The judge didn't mince words. You abused the authority granted by your community. You falsified legal instruments. You attempted to extort a private citizen with fake fines and forged documents. And worst of all, you weaponized the trust of your neighbors to carry out a personal vendetta. Her attorney tried to deflect, citing emotional stress and confusion over the boundaries. But the judge slammed that door shut. There is no confusion here. The property is clearly outside HOA jurisdiction. And you knew it. Karen was sentenced to 18 months in county jail, $85,000 in fines and restitution, and was permanently barred from holding any position in a registered HOA under Georgia law. The court also appointed a state oversight administrator to manage Creekwood Estates for the next 12 months, something I had never seen happen before. I walked out of that courtroom feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Reporters tried to stop me, but I just smiled and said, "I'm going home, the one I own fair and square." We drove back past the gate where Karen's little residents-only sign used to hang. Someone had taken it down. The next weekend, I installed new security cameras, cleaned up the last of the broken ceramics from that chaotic moving day, and took a paintbrush to a new sign mounted by my driveway. This property is not part of Creekwood Estates. Trespassers will be prosecuted. We have high-resolution cameras and a very good lawyer. My kids laughed. Rachel rolled her eyes and kissed my cheek. And for the first time since we unpacked those boxes, it finally felt like home.
Thank you for watching Is It Narrated Neighborhood Story.